Hey, it's Angie from Block81, and today I'm going to be talking a little bit about what it is I do day to day. So I'm both a designer and a front-end developer, and not that long ago I heard the term full stack designer. And to be honest, it's not a term I particularly am in love with, but it actually fits. And we'll get back to that in a little bit here. So when I started my career, I actually started purely as a designer, a graphic designer. I focused on logos, print design, business cards, stationery, all of that stuff within the graphic design realm. But early on, I realized that I needed to learn how to design for the web, and I also needed to learn how to code for the web. So I've been doing both design and development for over 20 years, and 18 of those years have been running my own business.
You're old.
My business started out as purely just me freelancing, and while the company is technically still just me, I do work with a trusted network of partners from time to time when a project requires it. Now, I did start freelancing pretty early in my career. I didn't have a ton of agency experience, so it's not something that I necessarily recommend for someone to start right away. But that's a whole other topic for a different video. But back to the whole full stack designer thing. What exactly is it? Well, in the simplest of terms, it just means someone who can both design and code. In my particular case, that means I can take a website project from concept to design to front-end development and CMS integration. The full stack development side of things like PHP and database management and all that stuff that goes over my head is definitely beyond my skill set, even though I have a really rudimentary understanding of it. But that's when I bring in experts when I need to. As you can imagine, the tools I use to design and build websites are critical to the actual process and workflow, but as you can imagine, they're also critical for productivity. For UI design, I primarily use Figma and occasionally dip into Photoshop and Illustrator when I need to create either photo composites or custom graphics. For development, I use Visual Studio Code, and I focus on HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, paying special attention to semantics, UX, and basic accessibility. I should note that I also specialize in CMS-powered websites, content management systems. And I think that's pretty common these days, especially with the ubiquitousness of something like WordPress, but I tend to focus specifically on Craft CMS and a couple of other smaller CMSs. While I have definitely built and maintained sites in WordPress, Craft CMS is still my go-to. And I may make a video on Craft CMS later on down the road. If you're interested, let me know. But in the meantime, be sure to check out craftcms.com. Like most developers, I use Git, and because the command line and I aren't the best of friends, I'd say we're more like good acquaintances. I actually don't use the command line for the Git commits and merges and all of that. I use a GUI called Git Tower. Then all of my code repositories live inside Bitbucket and get deployed via Deploy HQ. So the typical website projects that I work on tend to be marketing and informational brochure style websites with the occasional e-commerce or member-focused website thrown in for good measure because those are fun to work on. That's my bread and butter, but I also do logo design, branding, and a little bit of graphic design from time to time, but those actually are pretty rare these days, so most of my work, I'd say 95% of my work is web design and development. As far as clients go, I tend to work with small-ish to medium-sized businesses and organizations, and they actually vary from industry to industry. Now, I know that it's very common to say that you should be focused on a particular industry or type of client or type of project, but honestly, that hasn't really been super successful for me over the years, and so I've managed to build a pretty successful business without having to focus on one type of client or one type of industry, and it's actually a lot more fun that way for me. Now, as you may know, there are definitely some specific phases that go into designing and building a website, and while I'm not going to go into each one in detail, this is what they are. First, I start out with discovery, followed by information architecture, UI design, development, testing and QA, and then finally delivery, which isn't just the launch of the site, it also includes a period of time where I support the client if any bugs come up or anything like that, as well as ongoing questions and a user guide for the CMS that I've implemented for them. Alright, so I hope you've gotten something out of this video, but if you have any questions or comments, definitely drop a note, a comment in the comments area below, and I'll see you in the next one.